super happy to have Miss Kriya Lendzion. And I can't even go into all the acronyms that are behind her name. I'm sure she'll share those with us. But she's an adolescent therapist. She's an addictions and prevention specialist. She's a parenting coach. She's a drug and alcohol educator. She's a school counselor. She's an inequity disruptor. I love that. You have to tell us more about that, Kriya. Yeah, she has so many hats that she's wearing and everything that's going on in our country and in the world right now. Her services are greatly needed in schools all across America and the world. So we're super happy to have her come on the show and just share her journey and what she offers to schools, not only in the North Carolina area, but also all around the U.S. and the world. So Kriya, thank you so much for coming on the My K-12 Career Show.
My honor.
Thank you. And can you please just share what's going on in your life and in your K-12 career right now?
Yeah, well, right now, it's an exciting time for me because I had, after being in schools, working in education for about 20 years, took a little bit of a departure since I have both a school counselor background and a mental health background. I experimented with going into treatment, working as a therapist, and really realized that I needed to be back in the trenches of schools and again. It wasn't. And so I came back in. It's a little mafia-esque, right, in a good way, but it's like they pulled me back in.
Yeah.
But so I went out on my own in terms of having a private business of my own, where I am available to everybody now, in a much more open way. But I do have some part-time gigs at two schools in my area, private schools in my area, that I give, about 20 hours a week in combination too, as a middle school, specifically as their middle school counselor, and kind of directing some programming there. And then on the side, I've been in this really big, exciting, unfurling stage for myself, with all of these things. I feel like I've gotten really clear on my expertise area, and feel really sort of clear on like, okay, this is my special sauce, this is really what I've got to bring. And there's an incredibly big and increasing, unfortunately, need specifically for, the areas of, addiction and destructive use prevention, in terms of with things we're seeing with screens of all kinds, all things screens, and what's happening with kids, and the research is not looking good on what's happening with their brains and their around screen dependence and amounts of time they're on them. And substances, right? I mean, we're in a time right now that we've never been in before, where like kids just experimenting with things are dying because of the fentanyl crisis, and substances getting just hulkified and stronger and more appealing and more addictive and easier to conceal, right? So kids are using on campus and using in dangerous ways on campus. So it just feels like I was really being called, to use what's now developed as an expertise to really be, useful to schools across the country.
Yeah.
I just presented at the conference for the South Korean School Counselors Association.
Wow.
Because they wanted to know like what are U.S. schools doing, and use my expertise there, which is a really honor.
So it definitely is a worldwide issue, not just
it is a worldwide issue.
100%. So what are your expertise? Like, what are you in terms of all the different letters that were behind your name?
Yeah. So one of them is that I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor. So I do have, the ability, and I've had some private practice on the side here and there, but I really, again, it's not what I love doing. Is being a therapist, as much as like, I think what's changed for me over the last, few years in particular is me really looking systemically. I want to see how can I teach people to fish? How can I make a big ripple by really like, coaching, training, first, as parents and now educators, in school, and consulting with schools on like systemic interventions. But I do have that. I do have that license, and what's the other one? I'm a addiction specialist, licensed clinical addiction specialist, and a certified prevention specialist.
Wow.
And I haven't added these yet, but I can't remember what it's called, but it's a digital health. Like I got it certified in digital health for kids.
No, that's huge.
A coaching thing. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of these issues that we're dealing with in a lot of cases are new. Like when you start talking about screen time and all the issues that our students are having to deal with, that, focus, just Yeah, it's really tough. And I can say that as a school principal myself, I definitely see the difference in this day and age with even our students just 10 years ago. So what you're doing is definitely needed. I like the idea that you're thinking like globally, like, okay, not just how can I make an impact, but also how do I train the trainer? How do I train people to have these tools in their toolbox so that they can help their children, help our students if they're an administrator like myself. So I mean, do you have like I mean, I know you said you're out on your own. Is there a company name behind this? Is there
just me,
books,
nothing catchy?
handbooks,
Well, so I do. So I have a book in the work. Yeah, I've got a couple books in the works.
Yeah.
I was working on one and got derailed. You know, it's one of those that got derailed. So that I do have a book in the works that I am for educators on addiction proofing our kids in an addictive world.
Sure.
Or
that's the name of it. That's powerful.
Addiction proofing our students in an addictive world.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So yeah, so that's the presentation I've been doing, particularly with educators. And so a publisher reached out to me and was like, "That's fire. We want it. Write it up for us."
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I'm working on that right now. And then I've got a parenting book on being a teen whisperer and how to use that skill. I haven't figured out the title, but basically how to use that to guide our kids through an increasingly addictive, scary, confusing world.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I mean, obviously as a principal, I deal with parents all the time that are just, and sometimes they just feel so hopeless with their situation and just like, Doc, give me something, you know. So a handbook I think would be really powerful, you know, because I think a lot of times first of all, there's no one size fits all, right? Just giving them as many options that they can use to help their child with whatever they might be going through, I think would be really powerful and really well received, to be honest with you. Because again, like I said, there are things that we're dealing with in 2023 and moving forward that, you know, parents haven't had to deal with in the past. And
absolutely. It's getting harder. Yeah. And that's what, and I'm also creating video content. I mean, I keep, you know, a video presence on social media, but I'm also working on, you know, creating some things that just live, you know, that can be bought cheap, you know, like what does my kid need to know about weed, you know, in like 15 minutes that will engage them because, you know, they're not getting this anywhere else. And I don't know what to tell them. And so I'm creating some of those things that will live online for educators and for parents.
So, I mean, obviously, we're going to get all of your information in the show notes so that people can reach out to you for the services that you offer. But like you brought up a good point. Like, I think about one of the main things that, you know, let's be honest, schools have been dealing with this for years, but it's a lot easier in this day and time. And that's, you know, students that have addiction issues as it relates to prescription drugs, illegal drugs. How do we help students?
Vaping. It's all about vaping.
All of it.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it? What was your question? I talked about.
How do we help those students? How do we really, you know, be more preventative or be more proactive versus reactive, you know?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that, because, you know, I keep pulling my hair out when I'm seeing all these news stories. They're like, okay, well, this school did something. They trained everybody on how to administer Narcan. It's like, okay, so now you know how to respond if a kid is overdosing, but like, how about we go back, you know, that whole story about like, you know, instead of trying to being at the river and all the babies are coming down the river and pulling all the babies out, being like, who's putting the babies in the river? Let's go upriver and see what's going on, right? Yeah. So I think the bottom line, Joseph, is that like kids themselves, because we can't control it from the outside anymore.
Okay.
Right. I always tell this to parents and to administrators. Like you can search a kid's backpack and they can have a vaping device that looks like a lipstick or a key fob, or they can have their hoodie strings can be vaped out of, or it can be a functioning pen. And meanwhile, they can use the highest concentrated cannabis, you know, concentrate that exists in there. That's just straight like brain hammering stuff, right? So we can't just control it from there.
Sure.
You know, supervision and monitoring and consistent guidelines and expectations and consequences that are followed through on, all of that matters.
Right.
But ultimately, the kids need to be empowered with the knowledge and the tools to sort of buy into their own, you know, in investment, to be able to steer themselves through it themselves. Right. So, I mean, we need to be starting education drug education specifically, and not be afraid to talk about that, because the kids are swimming in, especially whenever they get one of these, they are swimming in pro-use messages.
Yes.
So if we're not getting in there and helping them to disassemble those and give them some facts to counteract the myths and the crap that they're hearing,
you're right,
the distorted stuff, then they're just wiring all of those beliefs and getting really, mutated perceptions of safety, of these things.
Sure.
And the desensitization and the ideas that this is just what you need to be doing to have belonging and have fun and feel okay in your skin and cope with life.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to be, ideally, we're starting in elementary school.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to be talking about cannabis in second grade. But if we're talking about respecting your body, what you put in your body, and monitor, and what that means for household chemicals and vitamins and food, and you're talking about peer pressure, choosing your friends and maintaining boundaries for yourself.
Sure.
And respecting each other's, and how to say no, and have assertiveness skills, and recognizing the uh-oh feeling in your stomach when something feels off. All of that is like 5, 6, 7-year-old language for what will become conversations about the things that can be self-destructive.
Yeah.
We just build on those but again, if kids are seeing it, we need to be talking about it. And they're seeing phones, and they're seeing vaping, and they're seeing drinking at a very young age.
Yeah.
And so they're making meaning out of it anyway.
Yeah.
And if we're not helping them make healthy meaning out of that, so that we need to get that education into kids and not be afraid of that. And then by the time, unfortunately, we had a 10-year-old die of an overdose, not somewhere near where you are, I believe, last year.
Wow.
The crisis is creeping down into not just middle school, where we've had to have a couple Narcan administrations in our local middle schools. We've had kids, green out, as they say, from cannabis because it's so strong on campus, and get sick and need to go to the ER in the middle of the day, but needing Narcan administrations because they got an opioid in something and didn't expect it.
Wow.
So this is a thing.
And it's serious.
This is serious. And so, we need to be talking. What makes people nervous is the harm reduction conversation.
Okay.
The same way it makes them nervous to talk about anything other than abstinence-based sex ed.
Yeah.
And to talk about, despite all of the evidence and the stats, somehow that's helpful, not hurtful. Yeah. It's the same with drugs. By the time a kid, particularly, and depending upon the neighborhood and depending upon what they're growing up around, at least by 8th grade, you need to be talking with a harm reduction lens, which means here is all of the information on the risks of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraging you to examine how, this could work against who you want to be and what you want for yourself. You're really doing all of that. And then ultimately you still need to be able to say, but if you're hell bent on going there, if you have all of this information and you still ask yourself, is the risk worth it? And your answer is yes, then I want you to know how to not hurt yourself and somebody else.
Right. Yeah. So as a parent, obviously I'm a school administrator for many years, but I'm also a parent too. And I have a son, as we take this episode, he'll be 13 in a month. I know the pandemic, as it relates to him and my daughter, has had a greater negative impact on him than it has on my daughter, knock on some wood, because I don't know. You never know. Sometimes these things manifest themselves immediately.
Yeah.
But just from an immediacy standpoint, we can see that it's definitely impacted him negatively. And I am concerned that he might be being exposed to some of these things, and I can't be with him 24/7. My wife can't be with him 24/7. What messages should I, as a parent, be giving to him and my daughter, who's only 9, about the dangers and the pitfalls that might come when they are literally seeing or will be seeing some of their own friends engaging in this kind of
Right. And nothing happening. Right. And it looks like it's all good.
That's true. You're right.
That's why FYI, that classic, I know, like my health teacher, my health class, and there was like the cirrhosis liver in the formaldehyde jar, right? Or like the tar covered lung. And I'm like, with my undeveloped teen brain, I'm like, I don't know how old that crypt you dug that out from. But number one, like, I'm never going to be that old, but I'm just doing this for now to have fun or belong or, not feel so stressed. I'm not going to like just keep on doing it till I become that.
Right.
Right. So I think, is empathizing. Well, first we always have to validate and empathize, right? Like with the kids about like, I understand, like you are seeing these messages. I recognize that. And you're getting this idea that this is the way to sort of meet these natural needs you have for yourself.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that makes sense. So first, instead of judging it or lecturing it, we go like, it totally makes sense that you would be curious about this given what your experience is.
Right.
And your world entails.
Sure.
And, just be aware that here's the risk that if that thing, say you do that thing and you love it, it totally works to, again, have fun, belong, cope, or like help you feel comfortable in your skin.
Right.
Right. Then what? Right. Then what? Because here's the thing. So if you don't want to be an addict 101, I mean, this is not even the overdose conversation. This is just the like how not to destruct your life with this conversation is that if you want to not, because no kid ever, if you're like, would you like to be an addict, and trash your life with this? Every single kid's like, no. Right. Okay. So if you don't want that for yourself, like with anything, whether it is gaming or porn or gambling or, fill in the blank,
there you go.
Then you need to have some accessible and fulfilling ways to meet these needs at work.
Right.
Some other ways to meet these that really work for you that you can get on your own.
Okay. That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then sorry, hold on.
No, you froze for a minute there, so you might want to start with that thought again. That's good.
Yeah, I don't know where I froze, but saying that. So even if you go there, right, that you will have these other things that in your toolbox, that already really work for you. Like, because if you have a hole in any of those needs, then anything that works better than anything else to fill it, you're going to get attached to.
Sure.
If it fits in there and it works, you're going to get attached to it. So we want that to be whatever, sports, other things that you get, that you feel good about yourself, that you enjoy life with, that you feel belonging and connection with, right? So we don't want you to have any gaps so that you don't over-attach to it. And again, even if you go there, then it'll be like, okay, like that's an option. I get that's an option among options, but I've also got some other ones that aren't going to like, I don't know, slow the growth of my brain or risk me getting arrested or cause conflict with my parents. Like I've got some other things to choose or even kill me. Right. Yeah, no, so I think there's that, the going back to the question that you asked before too, is about what makes a difference with kids. If we're going to make a difference, it's like, again, they have to have the buy-in.
Sure.
They've got to see that and be challenged to sort of examine like, so how could this stuff get in the way, interfere with the things that mean something to you.
Yeah.
And because we can't teach, again, the cirrhosis, liver did not speak to my values at 15.
Right.
But if someone was talking about how this could interfere with the things that matter to me, which was my friendships, that was my self-respect or my vanity, to be honest,
sure.
In my body,
that's real.
Or, right. Or damage. I ended up damaging. I was on a singing scholarship and I trashed my voice and lost my scholarship.
Wow.
In college.
That's real.
Right. But I had never thought about that, that the way if you drink and you can trash your voice.
Yeah.
Hadn't crossed my mind. So we got to speak to their values.
Sure.
In those things and then help them have all those other ways to meet them, which we can do as parents or as educators. Right. We can take responsibility for like, okay, how do we, especially those kids that are at risk that we know, they're swimming upstream a little bit with getting those needs met. Then we ask like, how can we help this happen on our campus, on our watch?
Right. No, that's powerful.
But I think that other piece is also, what I was just mentioning is that explaining that every single addict, whoever they look at and whatever their example is of that, whether it's the celebrity, that in the news going to rehab, or it's the rapper that overdosed, because we've had a few of those.
Yep.
They've been real public, or the woman that's on the street pushing the shopping cart where they're like, oh, what's going on there? It's like every single person that started just wanting to have fun.
That's true. That's true.
Just wanting to either feel something or not feel something, right? And nobody set out to become that.
No, that's real.
That's how it began. So
yeah, I've actually heard, I'm sure you probably heard this too, that everything we do is out of one or two desires: to avoid pain or to gain pleasure. Mm-hmm. And yep. I think sometimes young people, in their attempt to gain pleasure, don't realize that they're actually going to get the pain that they definitely want to avoid, right? And so I agree. I think it's making it relevant to their own lives. I like how you just shared, like, you didn't realize that drinking could impact your esophagus or your vocal cords, and it brought some pain into your life that you wouldn't have thought, taking that drink would have done. Yeah. So yeah, that's powerful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't start out that way. It was just, the tip was gradual. First, it was like, what? Yeah. This is amazing. Right. It makes me, feel comfortable, and the cutest boy in the room just seems to want to talk to me every time I, have a drink, and people think I'm cool. And I mean, it seemed to give me the things that filled the holes that I had at that age.
And they don't realize, I think young people don't realize that it's a slippery slope. Like the high that you get that first, second, or third time you do it is not going to be the same high you're going to get the 100th time you do it, right? So what does that mean? That means you actually have to do more to try in that search of getting that initial high that you got. And that's where I think addiction leads, right?
And that's where like our traditional drug ed, even schools that are doing that to some extent, really falls short, is that we tend to not, like, I started calling myself, I was, the drug lady in this community. They call me that fondly. But, I was doing just drug ed, and I really started expanding it to be like addiction ed. So I'm like, hold on, this is, it's really the same stuff underneath. Yeah. When kids start developing a problematic relationship to anything, it's still that same, philosophy that they're trying to meet their needs, and that this thing, meets their needs. So educating, started educating kids on understanding, number one, their brain, their growing adolescent brains, and why they are wired for habit forming like no other time in their lives.
Yeah.
And so like what they do between 11 and 14, 15, like really matters to get those needs met, because they're going to like hardwire connections in their brain, especially if they repeat it, that last into adulthood. Wow. That's science.
Yeah.
That's why I love middle schoolers, right? Because they're so like malleable, it's wonderful. And that's the good news and the bad news, right? They're so fun to teach because they soak up everything and it sticks.
Sure.
But that's also the risk.
Absolutely.
So they're, again, coming back to them being empowered with the knowledge and the tools, so for them to know, like, okay, so this is what you are exposed to, doing, like engaged in, even thinking, like over and over again. That means what you listen to, what you watch, what you're scrolling for, what you're like, that is literally wiring things in your brain. So you can choose and have control over, whether that becomes healthy or unhealthy things, and it's really a pain to unwire and relearn that stuff later.
And probably super difficult, right? Like it's not easy.
Totally. Yeah. So I think them getting that substances, for one, especially as strong as they're getting, whether it's caffeine or it's, nicotine. I mean, they are the vapes that they are using, and they don't know this, like the disposable ones that they're using the most, these little cartridges, they are being designed. They're not coming from tobacco anymore. They're being designed in a lab to be made more and more addictive.
Wow.
So the ones that they're using the most are 3 times as addictive as the other ones, those big like tank ones that kids vape out of with all the, the vape. So, but they don't know that. And what that means for that nicotine is the most addictive substance on the planet, or what nicotine withdrawal does, or that it damages their serotonin production in their brain. So it leads to depression and anxiety.
Sure.
So you empower them with that knowledge. Most kids don't want that.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean that they don't, the forces are strong to pull them there, but it really helps prevent it for sure when they have the why. Why shouldn't they use or use regularly.
Yeah.
You know, but then they also need to have the tools. That's the other piece of it, though, because you can say, hey, don't do this. This is a bad idea. And they can believe, okay, I don't want to do that. It's a bad idea. But they have to have the alternatives then.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, what fills in that gap? Also, I don't even know how our government even allows some of this kind of stuff. It's stunning to me.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, it's crazy that we're even allowing this. So, like, if I weren't to see you, and let's say that after we have this conversation, I don't see Kriya for the next 5 years, like, what are your goals for you, what you're providing to the world in the next 5 years or so? Where do you see yourself?
I love that question. Because I feel like it is just starting to, like, I am just starting to realize, you know, the things that I really envisioned for myself a few years ago, which is awesome, right? A little overwhelming, to be honest, but it's awesome. So I see myself really being able to, again, I think it's that ripple effect. It's that systemic. Like, I would love to be, you know, doing more consultation gigs with schools. Like, they've started to hire me to come in and say, okay, you know, we want 2 days with you. And if you could, like, teach our kids some stuff, but then leave us with some curriculum and some tools and some resources to keep it going. And then if you could train our, you know, talk to our school counselors about what can happen on their realm, talk to the administrators, do a parent education, and, you know, so that we can also look at, like, what do we need to do long-term, big picture to make a difference in this? Like that, I get so flippin' jazzed about doing that. 'Cause I'm like, yes. And hopefully this will just be, you know, will continue on and only build, right? Yeah. So I would love to be doing that, you know, to be consulting with schools, to be writing a lot more, to have a whole wealth of, like, video content and things that schools can be like, okay, we want our kids to, you know, watch this video that, you know, that you've produced and put together, or our staff. But I love doing trainings. I love speaking, you know, I love doing those pieces. So I would like to be doing a lot more of that. But again, to just feel like I can, and personally, I mean, I need to talk about this part because it's not just what I want to create, because I forget the other side of things, as we often do as educators, which is like, how am I going to take care of me?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and like, I also want to be able to be, you know, making the living that I would like to be making, you know, at this point, while working less. Absolutely. Because right now, as you listed all those things that I'm doing, like, I'm doing all of those right now. Yeah, I'm parent coaching, I'm teaching, I'm consulting, I'm, you know, it's a lot. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
So I really look forward to being able to sort of, like, exhale, you know, I want to be exhaling more and working less while still feeling like I'm, you know, making a big impact with what I'm doing.
100%. No, that's very doable with the tools that we have out there, with video, with YouTube, with all the social media that we have. Yeah, you definitely have an opportunity to create some tools that are evergreen and that will always be there for people to use. And yeah, I think you are definitely on the right path. I know, as someone that's been a principal in 3 different states, that this is a need everywhere. Definitely on the right path. And I want to honor you and commend you for all the great work that you're doing, not only in North Carolina, but your previous work in Florida and all the work that you're going to do in the future, not only in the USA, but the world. So kudos to you. Keep doing what you're doing. And, you know, we're just grateful that you came on the show to just share your story, share what you're doing, sharing how you're making an impact with our young people. And, you know, before you leave, we would like for you to give us some parting words of wisdom. Tell us how we can connect with you, and then we'll say.
Yeah. Well, I'm easy to connect with. I'm on Kjoycounselor on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on TikTok even.
Okay.
And I also have a separate Facebook and Instagram just for educators, which is Counseling with Pizzazz. I do have a Teachers Pay Teachers account, and that's my kind of handle there.
Okay.
So I'm in all those spaces under those. And parting words of wisdom. Wow. I can't summon it all up. It's hard.
Yeah.
Here's what's coming to me though. Here's what's coming to the surface is utilizing youth more in fueling our programming around this.
Okay.
Because for one, there is nothing more powerful than peer educators.
Okay.
Like when there are 8th graders that are talking to the 6th graders, or high schoolers, I would bring high schoolers in to talk to my 8th graders before they went to high school and kind of kick all the other grown-ups out of the room and say, okay, let's really talk about, like, what's up with the drug scene? How do they navigate it? What do they need to know? And those very cool, diverse group would be like, you need to know that you don't want to actually go into high school being like, yeah, I'm the guy that parties, and thinking that's the way to get friends, because then you have a reputation, you are stuck there, you can't get out of it. And you're gonna attract like fly paper things to you that you won't be able to get out from under.
Right.
So, but they needed to say that, not a 50-year-old.
That's true.
It's like, here's how to be cool in high school, kids. So I hear, they needed that from them, right?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, you don't really need to be doing this, to make friends and all that, and it's like, thank you, what she said. So, so I just think their voice and that using they can just make this great impact. But we also need to hear from them in terms of like, okay, why are kids going there? What do you think would make a difference? We forget to ask them.
That's true.
We do this as parents. We do this as, all the adults. We fail to see how much sort of insight and wisdom they know better than we do about what is influencing and impacting their world and what would make a difference potentially to shift it. So I think that's my one thought, is really to include them. I just did a consultation with a high school and I was like, you need to get a committee of kids together. And they were like, we didn't even think of that. Of course not. Right.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And have them do, campaigns at school and make videos that are in the little morning time or, whatever, that's peer led, because they just have a lot more influence than we do. Honestly.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, man. Look, I don't normally do this, but I would love for you to come back on the show, maybe around May or June, and let's just check back in and just see how things are going. And
I would love to.
Maybe if you want to give an even more targeted message to educators or to parents or to students, I definitely want to get your message out and use this platform in any way that I can help you to help the people that you're helping across the U.S.
It is life-saving stuff. I mean,
it really is.
That's why it feels urgent for me, and I'm so passionate about it. Yeah, and I'd be curious, that for your listeners to, feel free to shoot you those questions and those things that really strike them, so that we know, what they want to know more about.
That would be great. We can definitely do that. All right. Well, thank you.
My pleasure and honor.
It was great, Kriya. I'm super grateful that you came on the show, and definitely wish you all the best. What you're doing, your services are so needed in all of our communities. And the one thing I know as someone that's worked in the U.S. in 3 different states and even worked overseas for a time, is that the one thing I know is that all parents want what's best for their kids.
Absolutely.
Right? And so what you're doing is just super powerful, super needed, and I definitely wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.